if I want to buy a Ferrari, I'll know it goes really fast. And if I want to buy a Volvo, it's really safe. They're okay with their different brands, and so should you be. Authenticity, Caroline, is the number one. Research has shown now that a skill expires now every 2.5 years. So that replacement of skill, that's the kind of speed of cycle that we're on. But there's sometimes there's a real energy delta between doing a really good job at today and what you're going to be tomorrow. And often when there's a real big delta there, it can be really quite conflicting, where it's almost like, but I deserve the next role. Well, no.
You put your hand up to answer the question correctly, don't you? You don't put it up to say, oh, I'll just take a punt at it.
I know.
So we're almost programmed to have to be right rather than to be able to explore.
Just a real sliding doors moment. Got chatting to a guy in the lift in one of the offices who turned out to be the director of sales. Okay. Didn't know he was the director of sales, got on really well. And he came to find me and said, look, I've got this project. So anytime I get plaudits or a bonus or an interview with the Financial Times last week, which are really nice career highlights, Ali's part of that journey. Because having a family and a strong family with a great base is also important to me.
Great careers aren't built in the big moments alone. They're built in everyday choices, bold little moves, and gutsy next steps. Welcome to Little Moves, Big Careers. Let's dive straight in. Hi there, I'm Caroline Esterson, the host of Little Moves, Big Careers. And before we do dive right in, I wanted to share with you why today's episode is so very special for me. This interview is with Jon Turner, the Managing Director of Siemens Electrification and Automation in the UK and Ireland. And for those of you who were lucky enough to know him, you probably know him as a vibrant, energetic and direct man, full of passion for his work, his family, and of course, Stoke City Football Club. Jon was the very first person I interviewed for my research at the back end of 2024. And this was actually the conversation that kicked off the whole ideas of Little Moves, Big Careers. Because as you'll hear, Jon's career was actually full of sliding doors moments and small decisions that at the time didn't feel like much at all, but ended up shaping everything for him. And for me, what stood out during the interview wasn't just what he did, it was how he did it, with warmth, energy, and a genuine focus on building relationships. He noticed opportunities, absolutely, but he also noticed the people within those opportunities, what they needed, how he could help, how he could build real high-performing teams, not just climb career ladders and feather his own nest. Now, this interview is particularly poignant for me because so very sadly, Jon passed away suddenly in November after a really short battle with kidney cancer. And with the blessing of his wife, Alison, I really am honoured to share Jon's words with you today and to celebrate the legacy of someone who showed us that the little moves, when they're made with heart, really make a difference. We didn't record the interview to air. It really was just for research. So I apologise for the quality of the video. But I felt that it was important to show it, as this would have been one of the last interviews that Jon actually did. And I really hope you enjoy it. In closing this introduction, I want to say that Jon cared so deeply for supporting the next generation, and this will come through loud and clear in his own words. I know both Ali and I would absolutely love to know what you've taken from his messages. Please do share these with me, Caroline@inspireyourgenius.com. And I know that your words and thoughts will be of comfort to Ali and the rest of Jon's family as they're still really coming to terms with their loss. So, without further ado, here's Jon.
At 18, did you know what you wanted to be?
It's a great question, and I've never known what I've wanted to be. All right, and I still don't know what I wanted to be. And I guess I'm that example of where your natural skills have led you into a certain career path, and then because those soft skills or behaviors are appropriate, you're open to the harder skills that's needed to be, I think, successful in the roles that I've done. But even at 18, choosing a university path, it was almost go to university for the purpose of going to university, not going for a vocational direction. And I've got a really interesting, almost foundation in my further education, in that I completely messed up my first year at university, and I would love to say that it was because I chose the wrong course, of which I did. It was the fact that I found beer and women and an acid house. So 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 so
Good man. I think you had a proper university education, didn't you?
and that was exactly it. So I, at the end of my first year, surprisingly, have failed. Was the first kid in our family that had gone to university, and everyone was proud. I'm a working class family in Stoke. Like, isn't he doing well? To coming back and saying I've messed up. But fair play to my dad at that point, right? So he could have given me the absolute bollocking of my life, or he could have said, right, yeah, we're disappointed, but I'm going to teach you a lesson. And he basically he had a lot of contacts in the petrol forecourt industry, and said, give my son a job, make him work hard, and show him that this could be his career if he doesn't decide to choose a different route. And so it was almost, I really thank him for that. Actually, he kind of gave me that.
So how did you do that for?
For 12 months. Yeah. So interestingly, he within 6 months, the guy that ran the place, as I'd gone there as a quasi punishment, he then went, "Oh, this guy's got some management potential." And by that point, I'd almost decided I do need to go and complete the university journey, and was fortunate enough to go back. And due to the maturity and getting the social element out of my system, ended up getting a high 2-1 from Leeds University. So I tell this to a lot of people because there is still this pathway, isn't there, of GCSEs, A levels, university, career. That's the expected, but it's just not the norm anymore. And it's had lots of positives for me, but it's also had maybe some slight negatives around early career imposter syndrome, where you were almost, I've been this kind of not failure, but I'd let some people down, and therefore my motivation was almost to prove to my parents that I was all right and I was progressing. I'm probably worked too hard in my 20s, 30s to get on that ladder, to get on that career ladder and push on.
That's really interesting. I was having a conversation with a director in a media company last year, and he was really frustrated that people won't come back to the office.
Yeah.
And I just said to him, do you remember what we were like in our 20s? And what were you like in your 20s? How many hours a week did you work? And he was like, oh, I was a 70-hour week person. I did this, I did that. And I went, exactly. I said, do you want that for your children?
No.
I said, your son's 18, isn't he? And he went, yeah. I said, do you want your son to have to do that? Like we had to do it. And he went,
absolutely. Yeah. And interestingly, my middle son is having a year out, whatever that means, Caroline. And I'm just saying, just chill, just enjoy your year and almost gather your thoughts. You've been through that educational pipeline, the intensity of the A levels. Obviously, he's got his football as well, but he was, just choose. Don't rush. Just take your time. So yeah, that I did not know what I wanted to be, Caroline. I still don't know what I want to be. And that has been the story of my career thus far, really. And
I've enjoyed that journey.
And I think, and maybe touching on the kind of current generation, and maybe culturally as well, because a lot of my colleagues are Southeast Asian who are incredibly driven, right? Have to be, they've got a journey of where they want to be, maybe labeled out by their parents about what they need to be success. But there's sometimes there's a real energy delta between doing a really good job at today and what you're going to be tomorrow. And often when there's a real big delta there, it can be really quite conflicting. Absolutely. Where it's almost like but I deserve the next role. Well, no, you need to do a really good job at learning first and getting the experience and the basics, and then that will just happen automatically.
Absolutely.
Don't spend too much time being disappointed or focusing on what the next role is going to be. Get as much as you can from
And
every single role.
I think there's something about, we're taught, aren't we, to be really goal orientated.
Yeah.
Decide what you want to be. Imagine your future in 5 years time. And I think perhaps when we were starting out, it was easier for us to do that. I think careers were a little less complex. You saw the hierarchy and you thought, okay, these are 4 steps where I want to be. Whereas I think now, even job titles are really confusing.
Yeah, I know.
So it is. And I think you raised a really good point, John, about be a great learner.
Yeah. Oh,
Be exploratory and curious and kind of dip your toe in and see where things are at.
and do you know what, Caroline? In your briefing note, you talked about one of the things you put there was about mistakes. You know, what mistakes have you made? And I'm a big fan of mistakes, right? Particularly in your early career, because I know myself, there was this kind of, I remember just kind of being sweating when you'd done something which was a no. While you're in that formative phase, and particularly in those apprentices where you're almost in an incubator, a bit of a playground, go and make a load of mistakes. Go and learn from those.
The world isn't going to collapse because of it.
But you think it does, don't you? You are absolutely. I remember my grandma using a phrase about yesterday's chip paper, which is a great, and I still, look, it goes away. The next problem will just come around pretty quickly, and it will disappear. But I think, again, there was maybe when I was starting out in my career, there was this fear of failure, this kind of, you've got to be your best. That's impossible for someone who is below 10 years in their career. Make as many. No, don't be uncorporate or non-compliant or outside of governance, but just go and have a go and don't be good at it. So maybe this isn't my zone, this doesn't work for me, or it doesn't play to your natural strengths, and you've got to work on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, big fan of mistakes.
Absolutely. I do think that some of that construct, if you like, is rooted in our education system. You put your hand up to answer the question correctly, don't you? You don't put it up to say, oh, I'll just take a punt at it.
I know.
So we're almost programmed to have to be right rather than to be able to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I've made some great mistakes in my career. Probably, again, it's really nice to reflect on that sort of 20 to 35 zone, which is your real formative period where, I'm passionate, I'm energetic. It's my natural place to go to, which sometimes leans against my emotional control.
Yeah.
And I need people around me. Sometimes it's like, stop being a dickhead, right? And I love having challenging people around me who, I'm not a completer finisher. I put the enthusiasm around the start, but having those good people who've got that emotional control, around it. So I've got into conflict situations that were unnecessary. I've fallen out with people that were unnecessary. I've sent emails that were unnecessary. Those 11 o'clock at night. One of the greatest things I've ever someone taught me to do was that shitagram. Send it to your inbox. Right, turn your Wi-Fi on, put it in your inbox, and read it the next morning. And go,
I literally just had that conversation with somebody like 5 minutes before we came.
But again, it's all about these these formative years, you learning and getting comfortable with who you are.
I think that's really, really interesting, John. It's such an important point, isn't it? Because sometimes I think we're encouraged to fit in.
Yeah.
And so we look at the people around us and we look at our boss and we think, this is what they want from us. So I'm going to mold myself into that way. And I think very quickly those conflicts internally arise and make you feel deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we talk about a lot at the moment is find out who you are. Just, you said, be authentic. You're passionate. You want it. You can get things going. I know I'm not a completer finisher. So what is it that I need? What is it I need to do? Because the more we play into those strengths, the more we understand ourselves and understand our weaknesses as well, but it's shaping things around you to make the right happen.
Yeah, and look, I still take elements of that. I still class myself as a disruptor. So I like to experiment. I like to challenge the norm. But then I've learned that some things you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes boring is good.
Yeah.
So don't just be selective of where you're disruptive. Where maybe in the past I wanted to revolutionize anything. It's more around that sort of evolutionary piece. It's amazing. I love interviewing new candidates, right? That freshness. But I always say to people, and I've stopped interviews after about 10 minutes, Caroline, and just said, look, this isn't going to work, is it? But I don't think it's fair to kind of go through the motions of an hour when you clearly know that behaviorally, aspirationally, it's not right. Because I always say to people, look, right, getting the new role is almost like a marriage, okay? Where you've got to love me and I've got to love you, right? And then we decide that we're going to come together. But there are going to be certain roles, certain times that it just isn't right for you, right? It's not the right fit because it will end in disaster, a little bit further down the track. And that is okay. But also, you might be the wrong fit for now. But in 3 years' time, when the business has moved to something else, you may be the perfect fit.
Absolutely.
So don't, the kind of traditional conservative job advertisements don't ever sort of pull that out. That we're looking for someone with 20 years experience. No, we're looking for someone who is this really specific individual for this time of the business, and I think. Yeah, I think that's really, really important for people. Just don't talking about the future generation. I often feel that we're interviewing each other. Which is a really refreshing thing. Are the values of Siemens right for that individual? Do we tick the sustainability boxes? Are we an equitable employer? Do we make sure that diversity is top of the agenda? And if I'm saying no, they'll say, well, sod you. I'm going to go over here. I'm top talent, so I can go and choose someone else.
And that is very different to how it was, say, 10 years ago. And I find that kind of like real boundaried approach to job seeking really refreshing.
Yeah, I
think it's wonderful.
I know it is, and I, and this is back to that sort of this Gen Z generation, which is it's not, they want to be successful, but it's not all about work. It's not all about the paycheck or the Ford Mondeo, which it probably was in my formative years. It was, and back to your point, is I'll go through that job spec. I can probably do 2 bits. I'll wing the rest. I'll get in there and I'll mold myself into what they want from me. Whereas now it's very much, I can bring this to you because I'm different. And that, I love that. I love that refreshing element.
Absolutely. And I think, the more we can encourage people to do that, because what it does is it saves you time, apart from anything else. Saves you as an employer a whole heap of time and potential heartache not too far down the track. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
There just isn't that pretense, is there?
Oh, agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, love it. So you didn't know what you were going to be.
No.
You finished university with a great degree.
I did, yeah.
What happened then?
So let's go way back. So this is
go on.
This is 1993-ish. So if you remember at those certain points, and clearly you may not, Caroline. I don't know how old you are. You may be, you may not remember 1993.
You sweetie.
But it was, those graduate jobs, those apprenticeships, they were gold dust, weren't they? There wasn't, the big ones, the KPMGs and all that sort of stuff. It was very, very small opportunity. So like a lot of people, it was about paying off any debt from university, some kind of work. And like a lot of people, I jumped onto the call center bandwagon and just jumped in there and started taking calls and being paid the money that was required to go and get drunk at the weekend and probably Wednesday night and Thursday night as well.
So you weren't paying off your debts at the same time?
Not one bit. Not one bit. And I was fortunate enough that, and again, part of the lessons is that after about 6 months, just a real sliding doors moment, got chatting to a guy in the lift in one of the offices who turned out to be the director of sales. Okay. Didn't know he was the director of sales, got on really well. And he came to find me and said, look, I've got this project around hearts and minds in the organization. I work for Centrica, so the energy market was deregulating, so competition was coming, and he wanted someone to offer that passion and awareness around the business, and chose me to do it. Almost voice of the people, go and talk about it and tell them why it's exciting and interesting. And out of that, manufactured a role within his sales organization, almost as a marketing and sales assistant. So came off the phones, got in with him. Then the market opened up. Then he asked me to set up a field sales organization. Then and then it were regional manager, and then it just all the time he was my sponsor and mentor of that. So again, as a lesson to find,
isn't that interesting?
Someone who will, and look, they don't open doors for you, Caroline, but they guide you toward those doors. And at that stage in my career was incredible. And I ended up being the director of sales for British Gas in the UK from a sales assistant.
That is fantastic.
And ironically, this guy who sponsored me was that role and was moved aside. So, but there was no acrimony there at all. There was no problem. It was just the right time for him to move away. So,
I've been reviewing for one company a whole heap of podcasts that they've done on careers. Every single person, had exactly the same moment.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? It is. And look, I think when I say a sliding doors moment, I could have gotten that lift and said nothing, couldn't I? Right?
Absolutely.
But I thought I there's a genuine thirst for knowledge and knowing people, and it was just who are you?
And it wasn't. I take it from what you said that it wasn't sort of a strategic move because you didn't know who it was.
I haven't got a clue.
You were you.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you doing?
You made the most of any opportunity.
How was your lunch? Yeah, and it was literally an elevator pitch, but I didn't realize I was pitching, and then he came to find me and said, "You've got a real infectious personality. You'll do for something I'm doing." And then the doors opened, and away you go on the ladder. So, look, again, I say to my kids all the time, you miss every opportunity you don't go for. So take the opportunity. So back to the career path. I'm not going to say I was lucky because I was fortunate that I had the opportunity to take up. I wouldn't have progressed unless I had something in me. Yeah. However,
of course,
I had a sponsor / mentor that guy, when I was going off track or maybe I've just lulled in my aspiration, pushed me that little bit further. And that was for a good 10 years that individual did that for me.
That's really interesting that you had them for a decade. And I think one of the things that occurs to me about that as well is that, they're there to kind of help you maneuver. But I think sometimes knowing that somebody's got a belief in you, it gives you such a confident platform, doesn't it? Because it's like, they see something in me, I must be doing okay, even unconsciously. Therefore, I'm more prepared to take risks, to try things.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in it on my own.
And again, it creates your DNA of what you are. And back to kind of kernel back to those mistakes or things I would have done differently. I've probably assumed from that everyone that I identify that has got potential, I try and do the same for them. Caroline, I've had some people that just don't want that, right? And therefore I've over pushed them. I've opened the door and pushed them through, and they didn't want to go through that door. And that's recently. That's where you've got real potential. I see something in you, and it's created a plateau in their career, or they've been over promoted as a result of me identifying that they couldn't really realize that potential themselves. So it's got to be a good fit.
They've got to want it in the moment, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got to be a good mentoring partnership. And I reflected on that as an adaptive leader. It's not everyone wants to be the next MG, John. Some people are quite happy just being the 9 to 5 and turning it over. And don't assume everyone wants to keep going. And again, look, that's a recent learning in my early 50s. I guess, look, I'm in a position now as I'm towards the sort of twilight of my career. Where I get my energy from is seeing that potential realized, seeing those underneath me really start to narrow the gap between myself and themselves, and have a real credible succession plan. behind there, not just one that's written down because you feel you've got to, actual succession plan that we invest in, and we give them those opportunities to do it. So we've got to assume that everyone isn't that on that aspirational journey. They've got a fit, but not the fit of nuclear in terms of moving on in their career.
Yeah, and I think that's the responsibility there is on the leaders within the organisation, isn't it? To be prepared to ask those questions. And I think that's quite hard because it's nurturing talent in a way that wants to be nurtured. So, some people might be resistant just because they don't have the confidence. And so you work on the confidence for a little bit to work out whether, and it's sort of those kind of machinations, isn't it, to try and help them understand what they're capable of, make a conscious choice about it in those situations.
Absolutely. And it's back to that marriage point. It's got to be a good partnership with that. You've got to be a good fit for each other, and one, no, not for me, not to assume domination over that development path.
Yeah, partnership is the key. It is. There isn't a power base in the career path.
Absolutely not.
Or if anything, they should own that power base.
And all done from a position of great intent, but completely not appropriate for that individual.
You naturally, because of your passion and exuberance, went into sales.
I did.
Yeah. Did you, at any point, was there did you have a dream job that you wanted? Did it look anything like sales?
No, not at all. Right. So I think there was a point probably in my late 30s where there was that moment of, do I want to be in sales forever? Okay. So I hit various glass ceilings in Centrica. I then went and worked for an SME. And again, maybe slightly glass ceiling. Siemens again into a sales role, account management role, head of role, director role, all the normal stuff. And it was that, do I want general management? Is that what I wanted? Is that my next step? And at that point, I had someone I reported into that was, oh, you're the best salesperson I've ever seen, right? So you do not want to be a general manager. No. And I listened to him, right? And I went, okay, well, he's highly complimentary. In hindsight, he was probably saying, don't go anywhere because you are one of the best I've got. And therefore, I'm subversely curbing your development because I don't want to lose you. And then for probably about 2 years, wheels span around a couple of roles where it felt like I was reinventing myself for the purpose of my own development. And I didn't like that, Caroline. I felt rudderless a little bit, still contributing, still performing high. And then an opportunity came around and it was a general management position as the managing director of a smaller business unit that I do now. And then I'm into general management, almost like, oh my goodness, what is this? Right in the height of the pandemic. And then I've just absolutely second kickstart towards the back end of my career. I think sales gets a bad rep sometimes, right? Which is, oh, you're a nice person, you can be a salesperson. It's a skill, right? It's a requirement to negotiate and to engage and to know when to stop, etc. I think it's a skill that is in everything you do. So in my current role, if I have an idea, I've still got to sell the concept.
Absolutely. I think it's such an important skill.
So it's a really good grounding for for anything that you're trying to negotiation with your kids about something that you want to do. You're selling it. You're looking for the minimum objections. So I think really specialist up until mid-40s. Like I probably could have just carried on until infinitum doing various sales roles, but just thought there was just something that I went, what's the? Do you know what I think it was? The business I took over was a business in a bad place, right? So, and again, back to that marriage and fit at the time, it needed that kind of customer-facing energy, direction, clear sales strategies, and it lent to the nice dovetail into where I had been, but with that general management. So again, good fit for me at the time. I wouldn't need that now. We're an operationally heavy, highly performing, big turnover business that we've grown. And therefore, a salesperson is probably not the right person to take over from me. So it's that really, probably another sliding doors moment. It was the right time for me to take that little dalliance into, early general management.
Nice. But as you say, sales is through everything that we
Yeah.
do, in life. It's
Yeah.
our ability to be able to influence the outcomes that we're looking for. And I think that demands that one of the key skills that we develop is the ability to reflect.
Yes.
Because if we can't reflect on what we're doing and what we're experiencing, we can't change the outcome. You just end up in
Correct.
that cycle, don't
Yeah.
you? And
Absolutely.
I think that if you look back on your career, you've talked about a couple of defining moments that have given you the leap up. But are there any kind of defining moments that really made you question what you were doing? Maybe mistakes that you made where you, this absolutely isn't right?
Just that period of wheel spinning for 2 years,
Okay.
you know, that where almost reinventing the role myself to kind of give me that,
To
you know,
try and give you drive back.
yeah, almost like an internal ceiling where I'd kind
Yeah.
of gone, there's got to be something else other than this. And probably if there's a mistake or a regret, I don't have a lot, to be honest. I'm really fortunate, is maybe not doing something about it earlier. However, the opportunity probably wasn't there to do
Yeah.
it. So I'm really glad I stayed patient and waited rather than maybe jumping ship or doing something outside. And it's probably back to that advice I gave about, you know, the current generation around ambition over performance. Those ambitions, if you continue to perform high, those opportunities, those doors will open.
Yeah, I really like that point about being patient, John, because, certainly if I reflect on my career, I wasn't at all patient in my 20s. I moved and moved and moved and moved and moved and got loads of experience as a result of that move. But what I didn't learn was the ability to grit in. And that didn't come until much later for
Yeah.
me. And I suppose, you can look back and regret, but also you can look back and think, actually, that taught me a really important lesson
Yeah.
because I was in a relatively senior role at that point. And I had to learn very, very quickly the importance of grit,
Yeah.
to stay the course on things.
Absolutely. And as well, there are moments in your, we had that kind of period of bringing the kids up, right? So your work-life balance kind of dial shifts, doesn't it? From nobody can do it perfectly because it's just not possible to do it. So there are times where you have to do young kids, bringing them up, their interests. You are probably less an eye on the career, and maybe a quieter role that you can turn over is right for you at that particular time. My kids are now sort of self-reliant, apart from
Yeah.
financially, unfortunately. And
You better get the next promotion then, haven't you?
it's that second life of, a bit of me now, and I can move the dial back towards work again, and really have that sort of second early career in this general management space, and that is just so energizing for me, so refreshing.
It is really important to recognize that there are pivotal points in your life and you just can't separate what your desires and drives are around work and your family or your personal life. It's so intertwined. And I think it's really important to recognize that. I think we try and pretend that they're two separate entities sometimes, and they're just not. So yeah, I really like that analogy. That was really important.
Yeah, and I will name check my wife in this, because so again, I couldn't be where I am in my career if it wasn't for her. So as a partnership, we made that decision that she would sacrifice her career. Now that, in probably today's world, that doesn't sound too equal, but it was a collective decision that, I would disrupt myself in terms of nights away, traveling around the country. She would give up that career, and she would, she was adamant about that strong foundation for the kids. She didn't want latchkey kids. She wanted mum to be there when they came in. So I'm only as a result of the great partnership that I've got with my wife, and that is so important, and even now she's like, it's quite an attractive, she finds it an attractive trait that I remain ambitious. I frustrate the hell out of her, because I'm like, you just can't, would you just sit still and just enjoy what you've got? But no, I won't.
What's next?
Yeah,
I love it. And I really appreciate the fact that you've done that, John, because we we have so many influences in our lives and people that we impact through what we do. I think right at the start, you talked about a partnership. You know, you
Yeah.
talked about the partnership between you and future employees, for example. But I do think that partnership and that ability to build those relationships are such an important part of it. And I think it's lovely that you've acknowledged that. Really nice.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's not anytime I get plaudits or a bonus or an interview with the Financial Times last week, which are really nice career highlights. Ali's part of that journey, right? Because having a family and a strong family with a great base is also important to me. But she had to do the sacrifice.
Mm.
That's what we've done. Yeah. So it's
Well, you talk about sacrifice, but maybe to her it's not a sacrifice because you said she didn't want latchkey kids. You know, she wanted to be there for her family. So it's the joint decisions that you make around your lives together that I think is so vital that we acknowledge that.
yeah, no, definitely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, it is. It's this is like therapy for me today. It's great.
Sorry.
I'm having real reflections. It's good. It's really good. I just wish, Carol.
I think language matters, doesn't it? You know, the labels that we put on things are important. So might be you have with Ali over a pint tonight.
That's exactly, yeah. And I'll create this really romantic Disney image, but she'll be shouting at me because I haven't put my shoes away or something like that when I walk in.
Absolutely. There was another thing that I wanted to pick up on because I think this, for me, this would be really interesting. You went from a huge corporation like Centrica with massive amounts of rules and structures and business units and processes and all that sort of stuff to an SME.
Good.
How did you find that transition?
Yeah.
I would imagine that was very, very different.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. But in the learning journey, it learned so much, and the fact that I'm back with a large corporate probably tells you where my natural space is.
Mhm.
You know, my natural space is probably that ability to be entrepreneurial and have the ability to make my own decisions, but the safety of that large corporate space. And when I was in the SME, that safety net wasn't there, right? So you can be entrepreneurial, you can fag packet ideas, you can be close to the decision making, but there could be a Thursday afternoon where a meeting is called that we haven't got enough cash to pay the people on a Friday. I love the risk. I love the dynamism and the speed and the agility, but I had a young family, and if you're cool with that and you understand that it could all end tomorrow, then that works for you. I think that agility of decision making and that requirement of performance came from that little window with an SME that I had for 3 years. Yeah,
But that is something you carried through to what you're doing.
I'm running an SME within a corporate now.
Yeah.
That's how I run the business. You know, that's how we're all shareholders. We're all, one of my biggest frustrations is not making a decision.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's the wrong decision, Caroline, you know, make a decision. Stop. What more analysis do you need? You know, it's only going to be the same analysis. You know, and sometimes it'll be water, and sometimes it'll be a massive piece of concrete that you land on when you jump. But at least make a formative decision based on the information you have now, and that's what the SME taught me. You know, you cannot hang around with decision making. But yeah, that was great 3 years, really, really good 3 years, and obviously had enjoyed some equity in there as well. So financially, it was really good. But I just needed that safety of a corporate.
Yeah.
And the ethics and the governance and the compliance and all. Eventually, you realise, oh, I quite like working in that framework.
Yeah.
You know, that speedboat is nice for a bit, but probably not my natural space longer term.
Yeah, and thank you for being so honest about that, because I think sometimes people are dissatisfied for whatever reason, and rather than tackling the dissatisfaction, will jump. And when they jump, they realise the grass is not greener.
Yeah, and listen, it was great. It was, as I said to you,
did that, but you learned something really.
It was right. It was right. I'd reached the level at Centrica where the next step up, I didn't have the right education. I didn't have the right golf network. You know, I was into that sort of territory, and like it or not, at that time in an organization like Centrica, there was a certain club that got those big jobs. Yeah, very different now. Great business, and same as at Siemens. I'm sure it was the same there.
Yeah.
And you just thought, well, I could just kind of keep banging my head on this glass ceiling, or I could go and do something a little bit different. And it felt right at that time.
Yeah, it was that kind of network was of a time, wasn't it? Yeah,
100%.
I remember hitting my head against that, and hugely grateful that it isn't. We've still got some way to go, but it isn't anywhere near as bad as it used
No,
to be.
and nowhere was it written
Work in
down.
progress.
Nowhere was written down. Only these kind of people are allowed in this club. But it was just that cultural blueprint of an expectation at that level within the organisation, and probably from a shareholder perspective as well. Unfortunately, at that point,
Yeah, mine was
I've come from there, and landed there.
Yeah, my situation was very similar, John. I was in a position where I was the only female reporting in. 8 of us in the team to the director, and they would have bad tie Fridays, and they would go to golf once a month. And it just wouldn't even occur to them that I might play golf, let alone want to go and join them on a Friday afternoon, that kind of thing. And it was so incredibly overt, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, and it was accepted, wasn't it? So
it was the way that business happens, really. So we talked about how important having a mentor was to you at the start of your career. Have you had somebody that's supported you as you've carried on? Has there always been somebody around, or was it just in those 4 years that?
Do you know what? It's really interesting. I think. Again, you get to a point in your journey, your experience, and your development that almost you're alongside who would naturally be your mentor, and therefore, what I've tended to do is look outside of the business for a mentor to give me a different perspective. But something that I've done in the last sort of 3 years is reverse mentoring.
Okay.
Where I've used the organisation to tell me what you think how I can be different.
Fantastic.
And that's been so refreshing. And I've deliberately chosen people who I think would be challenging to me. And again, we've really helped each other. So at this point, at this juncture, which is about 1 million miles away from the top of Siemens, so occasional outside of interesting people who are like, so there's a guy called, I don't know if you know, I know a guy called Damien Hughes. He works on that podcast with Jake Humphrey called the High Performance Podcast. He's a professor at, so he's a local guy. I've known him for years, but sometimes just go for a coffee and bounce some stuff on him. Really, really interesting guy. So, and then weirdly, sort of other stuff, people you don't even know, but podcasts. So I use podcasts almost as a mentoring tool, getting those little snippets and ideas that you think, wow, yeah, that's new. That's really interesting. I'll use those.
Have you got any favourites in your podcasts?
I have, but you'll go, oh God, John, you're just saying. I love The Rest Is Politics with Rory Stewart. I love it.
I thought you were going to say my dad wrote a porno or something like
that. No. But I listen to. I mean, Stephen Bartlett. Some of his guests are exceptional. But I like a lot of sporting analogy as well. So I love all the stuff that Gary Neville does with the overlap and bringing on sports stars and really getting into their journeys. But the High Performance Podcast, which Jake and Damien do, is around the definition of high performance, which again is my obsession. And for different people, from Formula One to corporate to sailing around the world, people's different interpretation of what high performance is and how they've got there. So I love all that, and it's so accessible now, isn't it? And so mobile. You don't have to be sat reading it; you can just absorb it, and
it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'm a listener, so podcasts really, really work for me as well. But one of the things that I do is I just kind of like see something, and I'll give it 5 or 10 minutes and try it out, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I've found some amazing stuff from doing that, because I think it's really important to open yourself up to influence from all different things and think, what can I learn from this? I'll watch a film and it'll be, what can I learn from this?
But I also have because I'm on this top talent in Siemens program, I have a dedicated mentor that is independent, and he's an ex-Olympic bobslayer, although works within Siemens. And again, so it's probably more about tapping in rather than an absolutely dedicated mentoring program.
And talked about businesses need different people doing different things at different times. I think it's the same with your career as well. I think when you're younger, it's really good almost having somebody in oversight position, just
Yeah.
like supporting, guiding, nurturing, and they get to know you so they can do that. But once you've got all of those core skills in place, once you've got your foundation, I think you're looking more for inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ideas, different
Yeah.
from different people.
But as I say, I'm not probably more 360 now as well with that reverse mentoring. I love. You have to choose the right person because they can go into their shells. Because sometimes, even though I'm John, they still see the name above the door and they go, "Oh my God, it's the managing director." What? Well, it's like, whoa, no. I'm not doing this as a token gesture. We're doing this properly. What do you like about what I do? Where can I be better? Who have you seen that does things that? And you've got to be really open-minded to that and not kind of, I don't believe that, I can't believe it. But so, yeah, and I really enjoyed those reverse mentoring sessions.
Yeah, and I think people will know you. You wear your heart on a sleeve a little bit, don't you? So people
Very much.
what you're entering into this not as a tick box exercise. This is something that you really want to know, and I think that would help as well.
Yeah, and look, that role modeling piece is real, and I mentioned it before about it. That I think that's really important. I think that's really important um, for me, right? So I'm conscious that I've got to make this look like an attractive proposition for the next generation that are coming through. I want my first line to go, I want to do that job, because there are so many roles you look at and you think, I just don't want to do that. That is not, because the individual looks broken and their behaviors aren't right. So I have to be so conscious about how I am. So I've set this level at energy, enthusiasm. Caroline, if I ever drop below that, my God, people, what's up with John? What is wrong? What's happening? Are we having a reorganization? Is the business being sold? What is it? And you're like, hang on, I'm just having two espressos yet. What is wrong? So you have to be so conscious of that image. There was a girl who I used to work with, really junior, but she was lovely. Those individuals in the office that you just bounce off, bit of crack, bit of banter, off you go, great day, and a little recharge battery from an individual, similar personality. And she came up to me one day and she went, and this you asked the question in your brief about advice, right? And it was from this girl, and she said, "Do you know you're a massive mood hoover?" I went, "You what?" I went, what's a mood hoover?" She went, "Well, if you're in a really good mood, right, and everyone's really pissed off in the office, you suck out that bad mood and turn it into good." I went, "Right, thank you." And she went, "However, when you're in a really bad mood and everyone's in a great mood, you suck out that good mood and turn it into bad. Just be aware of yourself." And I thought, wow, mood hoover. My wife calls me it. So I've lived by that bit of advice. Don't be a mood hoover.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about, whenever you're in earshot or eyeshot, you're on stage.
Yeah.
So no communication is neutral. Whatever you say and do has an impact. Make sure it's the impact that you want it to have. But I can see that if you are a high energy person,
Yeah.
and you just drop slightly, I can imagine that would have an impact, actually.
And I'm not a golden retriever. I don't bound through the office, but I always make a really conscious effort because I've got multi-sites. I'll start at reception. "How are you doing, Jan? How's your day?" I think that's still, I know it's an old school thing, but I think it's so important, particularly in the
Old school, it's kind of basic human respect.
cliched again. The person who's cleaning the toilets to me, it's one big team, isn't it? Right. So why is that person cleaning the toilets? Why should she not get 2 minutes of my time, and my board get 2 minutes of my time? And I say to my PA when I arrive in my Newcastle office, my first hour, I'm just going to walk the floor, and that's all I do. Right. And it's, how's the kids? Did you watch the match? Just trying to just level that approachability factor there again, because I want people to feel part of the family, and I want people to have skin in the game in terms of the ambition. And if they don't feel like that, and they don't feel part of it, you're not going to get that.
So do you think that the way that you are, do you see those character traits being reflected in the next level down and the next level down? Can you start to see it filtering?
In their own unique way. So the last thing I would want, and no one wants Jon Turner version 2, right? But I just see that. I think it's through those, those behaviors around speed of decision making, a really clear plan and ambition that frames what we're doing, assertiveness without being overly rude. I just see high performance in different shades depending on what their personality type is.
Yeah, because the personality has to shine through.
Authenticity, Caroline, is the number one. The number one. The amount of people that you
Is that
think.
what you're checking when you interview?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. That. 100%. Because
Mm.
you know what I'll do in interviews as well, which people I'm interviewing with, why it makes it so awkward. Why'd you do it? Well, because I like it. I'll stop an interview and I'll go, "How do you think this is going?"
I think that's great.
And the kind of will go, "Is it? I don't know, is it anything that we've done over the last half an hour that you want to revisit?" Or will go, you felt that you could have done a better because you're not. I hate that. I want to. Can I work? Can I work with this individual, and can that individual add to our organisation? It's not a beauty parade.
You want it so you can get to know them properly, don't you? Rather than
and that is exactly it. Yeah, exactly it.
nick that.
Yeah, and it's good. Honestly,
Yeah.
we can have a brief. We're just gonna have a little pause. How do you think it's gone? Because I think, and I'll say, look, I think you've been good. However, what's missing, and I'm not giving them the answers. I'm just saying what I'm not getting from you is that
That's giving
drive. Yeah, because we've both invested in this hour in terms of this interview. Let's make sure we both get out of it what we want.
You reminded me, John, my very first interview. I caught the National Express coach, hustled down to London for a management trainee position with Debenhams. I bought a new suit and a white blouse. I was 18. The first time I'd been down to London on my own. Had a white blouse on, had a copy, spilt.
Oh my God, Caroline.
All down my blouse. I can't afford to get a new blouse. I've just got to go with it. So I went to the interview. I got there and it was the personnel director and somebody else, I can't remember who. But the personnel director I just felt was really standoffish. It was difficult to get to know her. And after about 15 minutes, she just went, "Caroline, this isn't going very well, is it?" No, it's not. And she said, "I'll tell you what, I see something. I want to give you another chance. What I suggest you do is go and have a walk for 5 minutes, come back in and we'll start afresh as if we have
brilliant
a conversation." A huge respect to her for that. First ever interview, I was in a strange place doing strange things.
Stressed to hell. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
Job.
Yeah, but
I went to go and work. I went to go and work for Debenhams as a Christmas temp, and then I became the regional training manager.
My goodness.
And through that, so it was really interesting because she remembers that interview.
Yeah, but also you left, and this is the other thing. You left with a great impression of Debenhams, didn't you? And you had this kind of I could see myself there, and that's we need to do that. Everyone that we interface with through the recruitment process, we need to make sure they get really good feedback. And we're doing our behavioural assessment process now when people join us. We give them that as a freebie to say, look, there you go. That's what it's telling about us. Use that to work on for your next interview somewhere else. Because I want them to go out there. They're my biggest salesperson. Oh, you want to go to Siemens? They're cool. They didn't get the job, but they were really good.
But I think we all need to have that attitude as well about ourselves. We talked about selling right at the start and our ability to be able to sell ourselves. But it is also about the impression that you leave somebody with, isn't it? Even if you don't get the outcome that you thought that you wanted, you want to be able to shake hands and for that person to go, "You know what, that was really interesting. Added to my day."
And that's back to my sliding doors with in the lift with that guy in British Gas. That I must have we had an interesting engagement. And I think maybe it's an age thing as well. And I taught a reference about plugging into people as a battery. You need them. I do not have time for negativity. And there was a time where I thought, I'll change this individual. I just can't be bothered anymore, Caroline. I have not got the time to, I will take out my jump leads and I'll put them onto a bit of positive. And that could be like something I did today. I had half an hour with a brand new apprentice who'd been here 2 weeks. And his boss went, "Is there any chance you could have some time with Sam? He'd love to speak to you." And I went, "Of course I would." And my God, he was like, "Jon, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've given this new," and you're just like, "Oh my God, that's why we do it. That is why we do this." We're giving Sam, who was basically working in a warehouse, the opportunity to be a project manager and engineer within Siemens. He was just, "Oh, tell my dad," and he's just like, "Oh, stop it, Sam. This is killing me." So yeah, I think it's finding the right people that you get your energy from.
Absolutely. And I think if we're talking about giving advice to people, they need to understand themselves. They've got to take the time to really think about who they are and what they want and where their strengths lie, so that they can equally make that decision, Jon.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Absolutely right.
And I think that's one of the things that we really, really want to encourage, giving people kind of tips and tools to get them to want to do that exploration first, because that can be kind of a bit of a confidence thing, to want to do it and then to make it happen.
I mean, look, experience is massive as well. You think you know everything, don't you, in those 20s and 30s? And how many people have you seen who have been over promoted too early, that they might have all the hard skills from their education, but their soft skills are lacking, their behaviors are poor, and they've just not learned to deal with those situations that require that adaptivity. And you just think, this is a car crash waiting to happen, and therefore I'm a strong believer in that alignment between phases of your career, the experiences that you gain, and those next stages. I've said it, I'm patience. It will come. The right path will happen.
I think that's really sage advice, and we keep touching on it. I would like to really make this explicit, if that's okay. What we're talking about is tactical and technical skills, aren't we, in a way? Yeah. And I think that some people will power through and get the formal education that they need to be able to tick the box, to be able to apply for jobs. But in a way, that's a mask. And what I'm hearing from you is the importance of really reflecting, understanding yourself, growing in that, your experience base, to be working on different things with different people and learning from that process rather than just the formal education side.
Honestly, and again, slightly Germanic tinge, there is an obsession with further education in Germany. So you have to have your school education, your degree, a master's, a potentially PhD. You're 27, 28 before you come out into the workplace, and then you are expecting the big job because you've done it, and you come in with absolutely no skills beyond those kind of hard skills that you've learned, right? Rather than experience, you've learned them from a textbook or whatever it may be. And Siemens is changing a lot more from that. They've recognized that. I was actually at a dinner on Wednesday night in Manchester with a group of Manchester-based leaders around the whole skills challenge. And the kind of exam question was around, research has shown now that a skill expires now every 2.5 years, right? So that replacement of skill, that's the kind of speed of cycle that we're on. And therefore the requirement for individuals to self-develop, the organizations to be agile around that, to skills-based hire, all that sort of stuff. It's really, really helping where we need to be. I'm a strong believer, Caroline, that with the right behaviors, you generate the soft skills, right? So again, I think I saw a publication from one of the large financial organizations that they've done a mapping of their skills in their business, and they're at 40,000 skills. Yeah. Right, 40,000 skills, and you think, oh, that's a lot. But it's probably right. It's probably and that's the kind of complexity that we've got. But it is that package. It is that kind of, you can't have multiple hard and no soft skills. You can't have all the soft skills and no hard skills, and that can either be through education or through experience. For me, I'm a big fan of that experience. You don't I don't want the education anymore. While we're being recruited for potential, we're seeing this kind of real untapped zone of people that have got the right behaviors, which makes their ability to adapt their skills so much easier. For me, the kernel of everything is that behavioral mindset of your learning.
The foundation for me is the piece around people wanting to learn.
Yeah, and that Caroline, you've
Not
absolutely
relying on
nailed it.
how-to videos to teach them what they've got to do in a given moment. It's that process from within that's so important.
And as I say, since we've been hiring for potential and we've scrapped the CV, we're seeing that. We're seeing people accelerate through their development program of their hard skills 6 to 12 months quicker than someone who we've recruited from a CV. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah, because they've just got that acumen of, we've assessed what their behaviors are based on their ability to learn. So we've mapped them against a behavioral assessment, and they're coming in 95 to 100% of where we want them to be in terms of those behaviors. And lo and behold, their skill development is quicker. It's all about behaviors, and by just focusing on those behaviors, you open up the pool of diversity of talent that comes in, because you aren't taking the 7 years experience, the degree, the masters. You're finding your lake of potential is just getting bigger.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's so exciting seeing how this will unfold. And I would say this isn't dissing formal education. If you want to go and do a PhD, amazing, do it, but recognize that that's not the only thing that you need. You need to be developing these other skills and experiences whilst you're doing that. That's
absolutely, and be vulnerable enough to recognize what you are in terms of where your behavioral map is. What is your natural energies? And if they're not right, you need to work on those harder. So we all get out of bed with our natural behaviors, right? So even before I brush my teeth, they're natural to me. I don't have to work on stuff. So in my case, for example, detail orientation is not my strong skill. So I have to really shift my energy onto that if I'm doing it. So just be aware of yourself. If you're coming from a predominantly educated background, just be aware what you've got to work on. It doesn't finish you. As we say, we're not dissing it, but just be aware of it. Yeah. Don't let your hard skills from education make you arrogant.
absolutely. Yeah. Jon, that was amazing. I think that was hugely insightful. There must
Thank you.
12, 15 different pointers there that I think would be incredibly valuable for people.
Thank you.
I particularly loved, and probably because I learned from it, I particularly loved your thing about being patient and being authentic as part of who you are and selling yourself to somebody rather than trying to pretend that you're somebody that you're not.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. And look, Jon Turner would not fit in certain places, and that's cool. That's cool. That's absolutely fine. Go and find the person that is. But it's not the end. In 3 years' time, you may need that Jon Turner. Just so again, Caroline, just to close off, I work with my people on all levels on their brand, right? Yeah. So what is their identity, and then and just be comfortable with that and work with that, and just say that's me. If I want to buy a Ferrari, I'll know it goes really fast, and etc. If I want to buy a Volvo, it's really safe, and etc. That they're okay with their different brands, and so should you be. That's what you are. We're not all the same. That is what you bring, and match that brand to the home where it works at that particular time.
Absolutely. Perfect.
I've loved it. Honestly, you've really helped me reflect this week, and I've had a tough week this week from a operational perspective. But sometimes you need these, and you think, well, maybe I'm not so bad after all.